Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bunuktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astoma Vidvishavahai.
While we're doing that,
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Question before us, as I understand it, is how can we conduct our regular life and our spiritual life with all the technological temptations around us, such as mobile phones, such as television, and all the things that the media provide. Today is actually Swami Vivekananda's solar birthday. And Swami Vivekananda was all about youth, was all about strength, was all about entering into the modern world of his time. But he also came in with a vision. So if we apply the vision, or a vision for the future for ourselves here, what will it look like? There are many people throughout the world that do not have these advantages. I come from Africa, and we don't have these blessings of mobile phones and all the rest of it. When you watch a movie, sometimes an old movie, and it comes, and the music is getting heightened, and the tension is increasing, and a person reaches or looks for a telephone box, the modern mind screams, where is his mobile? Where's the mobile? So there's no doubt we are having this Zoom meeting on account of modern technology. And modern technology is based on an amazing science. Largely, it's in the field of quantum theory, quantum physics, which we really know very little about. All we know is what it produces and how to manipulate it and how to calculate possibilities. That's all we know. But as I mentioned last night in the talk, that indicates another thing. It indicates that this world that we live in is at the fundamental level, and therefore the expressed level that we're living in, a little shaky at best. It's not certain. It runs on uncertainty principles. It runs on principles that say things look one way and behave another. So that's a marvelous technology that we're using. Now, it can be a curse or it can be a blessing, and it depends how you use it. First of all, we have to be convinced that our whole goal and purpose and thrust in spiritual life is only one thing, and that is described in philosophy as freedom. Actually, philosophy and psychology. We want freedom from pain, primarily. We want freedom from slavery. And we don't realize that we're enslaved. We're enslaved, of course, by the limitations of body and mind and our relationship that has to the world around us. And so, how to be free? Is there a free area within us? And all the great mystics and sages declare, yes, we have found it, actually. But it requires certain things to do. It requires certain steps. Just as any discovery requires certain steps, just as to get to a roof, a ladder is required. We can't jump on the 6th, 7th rung. We have to do the first step, then the second step. Like climbing a mountain, we have to go to the first level and the second level. We can't all of a sudden evaporate from one place and appear in another. At least, not in practice. In theory, of course, it's possible. Anything is possible. So what would be the first steps in spiritual life? It would be not only an understanding of this goal, but a sensitivity to it. That means that our emotions rally around, and that mobilizes it, it energizes us. We have to make this our magnificent obsession. And so that has to be kept in mind. And in order to keep this in mind, we have to have various preparatory reminders. In spiritual life, the categories of this come in scripture, that is the experience of somebody who has seen this inner poise, this element of freedom. Teacher, that is somebody who will guide us through the process, who has no ulterior motive but to do it. Somebody who's dedicated out of pure love. we require faith in ourselves primarily, and faith in an entity or a goal. If you're a devotee, the entity is called God. And I'm not shy to use the word, but it's not the extra cosmic creator God that we think of. It's that inner entity, that fundamental source. It requires a number of qualities. It requires perseverance, it requires patience, it requires purity of mind, and the whole of spiritual practice is purity of mind. That means when we use technology, we have to be discerning. Supposing we have an addiction to drink, it would not be a good idea to associate with people in a pub or go there. The Alcoholics Anonymous would tell you, please avoid this. It's equivalent to saying, please avoid bad company. So we have to be selective in what our senses engage in. And when people come to me often for some kind of guidance associated with peace of mind or stress concerning maybe many activities that they have to do, I don't really give them spiritual guidance. I give them time management. And the basis of time management from the spiritual point of view is that time is a resource that is expressed from its own essence. I come as time, says the Lord, in several places in the Bhagavad Gita. The reason why we have this image of this chosen ideal of Kali is Kali represents two things, death and time and their equivalent. See, there's a second. I don't know where it's gone, but it's gone forever. It's dead. It's in the past now. So we have this idea of time. And as long as we have this perception of time, we have to use it well. The unit of time for thinking is in seconds. The unit of time for time in activities is minutes. So that if you have an activity that will last in your old language, previous language of 2 hours, you have to rephrase it and say 120 minutes. Then you know there's a value to it because that minute is never coming again. It's gone forever. Same thing with thinking. What should we put into the mind? Now, technology has been a great advantage, particularly in the COVID. You know, I used to meet with Northern Ireland people who primarily started this group on a regular basis. I had to go up initially to Hillsborough and then, other places, Lisbon and so on, and we enjoy and like going up to. So without this technology, we wouldn't be able to access each other. There's a blessing. Today we had a whole program all on Zoom and YouTube. And we cannot manage in our ministry, that is the propagation of the Vedanta philosophy, without some technology, without a cell phone. That's one thing. Another thing is to respond to it every time it chirps or rings. Because all communication is centered around meetings. Now let's be a little businesslike. All meetings require an agenda, whether it's a 5-minute meeting, whether it's a 2-minute meeting, whether it's an hour meeting, and heaven forbid, whether it's a 2-hour meeting. And there were moves a while ago to have stand-up meetings. Big companies say, let's not waste our time with meetings about the minutes of the minutes of the minutes. Let's have stand-up meetings. And nobody wants to stand for an hour. So you replace this language of 1 hour by 60 minutes. And then see how your time is. And have a system whereby you know where at least every 15 minutes of your waking day is going. This is sacred time. Because in spirituality, there is no difference. There's no such thing as secular activity. And there's no such thing as spiritual activity. It's the one and the same thing. One is called karma yoga, and the other might be called prayer, meditation, and japa. The methods that we use have to be the same. So we have to mark out regular practice, just as we have to mark out regular practice for any endeavor. Supposing we want to master a musical instrument, most people who start it will give up after a few minutes, or maybe at most half a day. You have to have a passion for it. And the passion has to arise probably by being pinched, unfortunately, by pain. Nature has the way of poking us and saying, hey, look in a different direction. The formula you're using now is not working. Try and find something better, something else. And in that respect, nature is a mother. And when I say nature, I mean the whole of life, the whole of the cosmos, and you're included in it. Don't think that nature is just a tree or a flower or a mountain. No, the whole of existence is described as what we call, under the umbrella term of nature. So how do we handle nature? We have to look for where nature helps us and where nature hinders us. Let's take an example. In an old-fashioned well, if you want water, it's very easy to lower a bucket. In other words, nature is providing you the advantage of gravity. But when you pull it up full of water, that's a different thing. You have to use your muscular power and go against gravity. That is, go against nature's natural force, using nature's muscles. So we have to take all our technology in that same way. It's a product of nature, a product of human ingenuity using nature's quantum theory, quantum electrodynamics. All right. So I mentioned a meeting. Supposing you get a phone call. First of all, you'll want to know who it's from. Then you'll make a quick decision. Will I have time to speak to this person or not? You have to speculate a little bit. If you have no idea why the person is calling, then you might take the call and find out. Hello, how are you? What is this in connection with? And if it's in connection with something extremely urgent, then naturally you'll dedicate the time to it. But on the other hand, if it's something that can wait for a scheduled time during the day to return all calls, that's where you do it. And this is where proper organization and time management comes into play. I'm telling you this because in spiritual life, in monastic life, for example, there is a regular pattern of programs. Rising at the same time in the morning, according to a bell. Going to the shrine at the same time. Meditating at a certain time. Exercising at a certain time. Eating at a certain time. Praying at a certain time. Having vespers at a certain time. Night prayers at a certain time. Going to bed at a certain time. It sounds to many like over-regulation. But I believe you me, this is called pranayama. That is, it is controlling energetic force. Swami Vivekananda in his Raja Yoga explains this. He gives an explanation. He uses the discovery of electricity, relatively new discovery when it comes to alternating current, from his friend Nikola Tesla, who invented alternating current. If all the electrons actually move in the same direction, then you have a potency. But if they're all scattered, you get nothing. Right now, electrons are buzzing all over you, in you and around you. But if you take those and streamline them, it's very powerful. Right now, light is scattered all over the place. If you gather it all together and beam it in a certain direction, in a consistent direction, all the photons marching together, then you have what is called a laser. That laser is extremely powerful. Laser surgery is a wonderful non-invasive technique of dealing with many, many things. So it is the same thing with time. The regularity that we have is necessary. Try to be as regular as possible with your routine, which means that when you use your technology, you are budgeting the time to use it in a useful way. And I'm not saying throw away recreation. I mentioned monastic life. There is scheduling for leisure in monastic life as well. It's a human requirement. And so schedule the time for it and be disciplined about it. Enjoy the technology, but don't allow yourself to be a slave to it. Don't respond to every electronic murmur or whisper or shudder. This technology is very useful, and airplanes are useful to fly in. We can't do it. Don't have the wing capacity to do that. So we take advantage of the aerodynamic principles behind an aircraft and use our human ingenuity to make and model better ones which are safe and yet which are efficient. So yoga is defined in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter. What is yoga? Yoga is described in 2 ways: equanimity of mind and skill in action. And I associate the 2 together, because when you are efficient, you are making most use of the energy that is supplied. Don't think for a moment it's yours. You have no energy of your own. This is all at very minimum solar energy. But even that doesn't belong to the sun. All the hydrogen that is supplied, all the electrical energy that is going on, and the gravitational energy that is pulling things in, none of it belongs to you. We are simply responding to what is already there. These are divine energies. This is the supreme entity in action. We have to acknowledge it. So, what do most of this technology use? They use, cell phones use radio technology, microwave technology. When you cook food in a microwave, same thing. You're using waves in the electromagnetic field and harnessing them. Now you can harness them for some good. There's all these technologies, and every faculty that you have, an extension of the faculty through technology that you have, can be used for noble pursuits. And so we have to be careful how we use what we have. What do we have? We have a body. We have to be careful how we use it. We have a mind. We have to be careful how we use it. The capacity to direct thinking. We have to be careful how we use it. We have the capacity for speech. We have to be very careful how we use it. And we have all these communication devices that make our communication quicker and easier. Let's use it. But let's use it in a disciplined way. We have to resist temptation on it. Now, quite right, because the question is asking, it's like an addiction. It can be like an addiction. And all addictions, of course, to do with the external world are all, of course, so many diversions toward our central goal. And that means so many delaying factors. We can get to our goal quickly if we gather all the energy that we have and issue it forth in a concentrated beam. We can arrive at our destination very quickly. Right now, there are trains, for example. There are smaller versions of trains running at Eurostar, as an example, running at 200 to 300 kilometers an hour. But other trains have been developed where they simply use magnets. They simply employ the electromagnetic field and avoid all the resistance and drag that slow things down. This efficiency is remarkable. So these are wonderful things in this modern generation, and more to come, no doubt. But we have to be aware of what I call thumb exercises, walking down the road and doing this with your thumbs on the telephone. And it results ultimately in a highly scattered mind. It goes away or gets away from the very purpose, which is speed, quickness, efficiency, and gives us ultimately a busyness which is very difficult when we come to the question of discovering our inner self, where we require silence, where we require calmness, where we require inactivity. So these devices should be used with great caution. So let's review some of the steps. First thing is, we have to have a passion for the end. We have to have a passion for In religious language, that is devotional language, we have to have a passion for our most beloved, idealized form of the Supreme. We have to open our hearts. We have to dialogue sincerely. We have to get near that entity. We have to be able to listen to that entity and speak to that entity. We can't do that with major distractions all around. Secondly, we have to be discerning about our technology, and we have to make sure that our day and our life is programmed with an element of regularity, so that all our electrons, as it were, can be mobilized and moved and directed in a single direction. Then we start getting a sense of rhythm, sense of regularity, sense of peace. Is the old thing, I ask somebody, how many things do you have to do? And they say, I have to do this and that and the other. Today, how many things, this and that and the other? And within the hour, how many things? Oh, hundreds of things. No. You have to do one thing, one unit activity, followed by another one, followed by another one. And this is the principle of karma yoga in the sense of skill in action. And then the equilibrium of mind that goes with it is to do with not expecting any results, not expecting any fruits of your activities, and not being attached to the fruits of your activities. Living in this present moment, in the now. This now presence is the key to this ultimate passion for the final goal, for truth, for the Supreme Being, for God, vision of God. It only happens now. You'll only catch it now. Supposing we are in a position whereby in winter, as it is now, certainly in Ireland, where today is a cloudless sky, so there's a blueness in the sky, very bright and brilliant. The blueness of the sky is because the short wavelengths easily scattered. And so that gives us the blue end of the spectrum and gives us an element of brightness in the ultraviolet. In those days, we will find spectacular sunsets, spectacular sunrises. Now, today there was a sunset. You need to ask yourself the question, did you see it? And if you saw it, did you stop? Did you absorb it? Did you relate to it? Did you connect with it? Did you see the God within it? Did you fully enter into it? Did it become you? Did you become it? Was there some kind of inner movement, inner shift upwards, some element of love and delight that happened, some kind of inner rapture that took your breath away? And if not, then you have wasted some time today and wasted an opportunity. But chances might be that you might have been on a phone call, or you might have been on a WhatsApp, or you might have been on any number of things and missed the whole thing completely. What a pity. Now, if you had scheduled time for that, so you can decide when you take a call, if it's not that important, you can say, all right, let me phone you back at this time, and that time happens to be your scheduled time to returning all the calls. Emails. I know people who look at their email every 5 minutes. Schedule a time for emails. Some people say, no, in my job, we have to look at our emails all the time. Well, I don't think it's all the time. Surely not all the time. But you can schedule some time for it, isn't it? Then it becomes much more efficient. And when you budget time, make sure that you understand time is money. That means if you have a unit activity in a priority order, make sure that you put a contingency on, because emergencies can arise. And we are notoriously bad at estimating time, unit periods of time. We don't take into account maybe the traffic or what have you. And you see, so what happens is we get frustrated with time. Actually, we're not entitled to get frustrated with time. We're only entitled to get frustrated with ourselves, Because you know what happens. I can tell you what happens. Big Brother is always watching you. Big Brother knows when you leave the house and go to the supermarket. Big Brother arranges every person in your entire village or town to go to that same supermarket and get in your personal aisle and frustrate you. When you want to go to a meeting or when you want to go to some event and you leave the house thinking that you'll be in time, this Big Brother has a CCTV camera that says, let me put all the road signals and the traffic lights, make them all red, and then let's bring out the roads department and let them do roadworks on every single avenue that you take. But you see, it's not true. It only seems like that. And then you see you get frustrated. And frustration doesn't help you either. I have the great phrase, an old lady sitting on the bus with a face like a gargoyle will not make the bus go faster, I can assure you. I often joke, you see, in an elevator or a lift, you stand there. What do people do? Somehow they just look at the numbers. Well, it's not going to help. Will they assume that by looking at the numbers, the elevator will arrive quicker, or will go down or up faster? No, it won't. And so we have to have a way of thinking where we don't get frustrated by these things and where we don't get in a position whereby the technology, which is supposed to be helpful and useful, is actually frustrating us. And by frustrating us, I mean frustrating our central thrust in life, which is entirely spiritual. There is no such thing as material or secular life. There is no such thing as work in one place and spiritual life in another. And when we realize this unity of existence, when we realize the central purpose of our life, which is enduring immortality, which is to catch that infinite invisible, that spirit that is within us, when we understand fully, you see, most people don't do that. Most people say, yeah, that's reserved for a Sunday. We keep God in a cupboard or a closet and bring him out on a Sunday and then put him back in, and that's our job done. And then we'll go and play football or have some fun. But you see, that's not the kind of God we believe in the Vedanta philosophy. The kind of entity that we believe in is intrinsically in you to the point, to the very tips of the fingers. It's within every single cell of the body. It's within every thought or movement in the mind. It is the stuff that the mind is made of. It is the waves that are caught in the localized area that we call mind. It is the universal stuff that is caught. And it is simply the divine glory is expressed and arriving at our station. There is nothing else than that. And when we catch it, we catch a wonderful thing. We catch a rapture. We catch a sense of joy that expresses itself in a sense of fun. And so that's contrast to somebody who takes life seriously and says, I have so many problems. And then they dwell on the problem. It's equivalent to concentrating on the problem, ruminating on the problem, reflecting on the problem, meditating on the problem. You do that, you'll get problems. Whatever you meditate on will come to you. One of the speakers reminded us this afternoon that Swami Vivekananda remarked that when he meditated on the heart of a lion. And when he was asked why, he said, because, you see, that represents all the courage. You see, whatever you meditate on comes to you. If you meditate on the heart of a lion, you will get courage, you'll get strength, you'll get all the qualities that you meditate on. Meditate on an elephant, you'll get solidity and strength. But you see, it's not just an elephant. It's the quality of strength that lies deep inside it and expresses itself in this way, giving us a clue as to how we can transform our own behavior. So please use your technology, but use it with wisdom, just as you use any other faculty that you have. You have a mind, use it with wisdom. You have a discerning faculty, use it with wisdom. You have a body, use it with wisdom. You have the resources around you that you can apply a sense of aesthetics toward. The components in nature are extremely beautiful. Did you watch it? Did you look at it? Or did you only do it on holiday? And even if there was nothing around you, the wonder of the human body is there. The fact that a mechanical leg can move by itself, we just leave it to its own devices. We don't have to instruct, left leg move, right leg move, toes move. These move by themselves. These are all autonomic actions that have their origin in a life force. And there's only one life force. There's only one prana. There's only one energy available to us. It is divine grace. And it flows. The whole idea of grace is it's a flowing thing. It flows through as ideas. It flows through as speech. It flows through as energy within the nervous system. It flows through the subtle body of the nadis. It flows through all the breaths and breathing apparatus. It flows through every digestive system. It flows through every cell. It flows through as unfolding. It flows through as binding. It flows through as gravitational energy. It flows through as electrical energy. It flows through as nuclear energy. It flows through as even mass or resistance called inertia. It flows through, according to the yogis, in three ways. It flows through as solidity, inertia, and dullness. It flows through as activity, excitement, and expansion. It flows through as steadiness, rhythm, and peace. And we have to promote the latter as much as we can. And all our activities, with whatever we use, have to be used with a way of elevating the mind to the purest position possible. And you'll know that I often use the idea of manual gears in a car to notice wherever the mind is. And if it's at its lowest point, you elevate it to the next gear and elevate it to the next gear. And so it goes on. Some gears have four gears. Some cars have 4 gears. Some cars have 6. And with each movement, you're going higher and higher. Things have become smoother, smoother. So that's what I have to say about it. And I hope it helps. You see, as a Vedanta society, we have to use all these things, email, Instagram, the WhatsApp, and this and that and so on. It's all right, but it's all doing a broadcast, radio broadcasts. I was trying to look for the podcast that I did, and I can't actually find it. I was supposed to give address to the Dublin Synod of Faith Forum, and I can't find it. But so if anybody has that on the Spotify, is what I'm looking for. They've spelled my name incorrectly there. So we're using all these waves, and waves are part of nature. I gave a talk last night about it, a little bit more complicated than usual, but that's all we're using. We're using nature's waves, and we have to see them as divine waves. When they arrive at your cell phone, it's God in the form of waves, glory, divine glories arriving in your environment. When you watch a television, you're doing the same thing. Any of these modern devices, you're hooking into the electromagnetic field. It's a wonderful thing. But then at your station, called your decision-making factory, you have to then make a decision. Will I manufacture something good from this? Or will I manufacture something useless and cheap? It's up to you. I grew up in an era where we didn't have all these things, you see. When I grew up, when I was small, we didn't have such a thing as a telephone, what we call landline. And when we finally had something like that, it was what's called a party line. You have to see, is somebody on this? No? All right, then we work a handle like that, and some exchange worker catches it and says, all right, I'll put you through. And as far as mobile concerns, which are really radios, as far as mobile phones are concerned, the first mobile phones that I knew were something like, bricks. I remember in the first computer in Salisbury, as it was, in Rhodesia, occupied a massive one-block building with a capacity probably of your small PC or cell phone or something ridiculous like that. But now by radio control, by remote control, we're able to communicate with robots on Mars. What a wonderful thing. This James Webb telescope that has been launched, all by remote control, and a whole screen unfolding like this to shield the telescope, to shield it from interference. And because you can't launch such a big thing, it's all tied up like origami, and all by computer, all by remote control, all programmed, it all just unfolds. So somebody calls you anyway. Thank you for calling. What's it in connection with? And then you make a decision whether you should take the meeting or not. And if not, you say, I call you back, and you arrange a time because you have it all scheduled. And unless you schedule your time in this way and organize yourself in practical time management, then this will be a diversion. Everything will be a diversion instead of something that's useful to you. A useful device is the old-fashioned manual device. It is called a notebook and a pen. I don't know if you ever heard of it. So it works on very primitive technology. Now, a notebook can be carried around with you at all times, along with a pen. When you get a creative idea that flows to you, you can sometimes take it as a message, a divine inspiration. It happens when the mind is not particularly occupied with anything in particular. And so there's this inner place, if you will, of creativity that comes forward. And if you don't catch it, it's probably gone forever. So you can catch all these inspirational ideas. That's the first use of it. Second use of it is, if you're curious about something and you want to look it up on Google, thinking that Google is God for some, then write it down also and put that in your scheduled time to research all these things. See, otherwise it'll be so many diversions. It'll be like going on a country road. Let us say from Dublin to Dungannon, and every side road you decide to take a detour with a curiosity. I wonder what's here. I wonder what's there. I wonder what's there. It's all right, but you won't get to Dungannon quickly. It'll be a delaying factor. That's the problem.
Swami, what about people who often talk about, following a hunch and going with, there is a lot of people want to live like that, where they think that their intuitive drive or the gravitation of that pull is coming from more of a divine source.
You see, to understand what is coming from the divine and what is not, you have to be tuned to the divine. Let us take, for example, and you know, if you following a hunch is one thing, following somebody who's hunched is another. That's a bit weird. But because as soon as you said that, my sense of humor kicked in a little bit. So you see, if you follow your own hunch and you're not tuned in to the divine, the unconscious pull will be there. For example, if you are convinced that there is some kind of conspiracies, supposing you read about conspiracies day and night, day and night, day and night, and then an idea comes to you about conspiracies, that will also be unfounded, but you might classify it as a hunch. So the idea of getting some kind of inspiration means you always have to be attuned to the source of that, which we call cosmic mind, and religion calls it God. And those who are most attuned, we call them prophets, mystics, soothsayers possibly in the ancient days. These are people who are inspired. This is not a hunch. This is a certain message that comes, and there's a conviction about it. It's as clear as daylight because it's something that is being listened to, but we have to learn the art of listening. So we have to have some discernment when it comes to it. And we have to understand, all right, is it coming from an unconscious area that is full of a lot of mixed things? Or is it some divine message because my mind is tuned to that? And God's mind and my mind are the same thing. So that tuning process is spiritual life. The tuning process is really making sure that we, first of all, live our life in a certain sense of harmony. You were saying earlier about the youth, because it's National Youth Day in India, because it's Swami Vivekananda's birthday. Some of the things I would have said there would be, in the ancient days when a student was departing from an ashram, they were instructed in two ways. Always speak the truth, and secondly, observe what is called Dharma. But what is Dharma? Dharma means the power that holds everything in harmony and perfection. This universe is held together in harmony and perfection. Your body is held together in harmony and perfection if you leave it be, if you do the right things, if you harmonize your body. And so somebody who lives like this will draw harmony into their life, whether it's his or her life. And that will have a transforming effect on bodily conditions, mental movements. They'll all be excellent. And they'll bring an element of order into the environment and into the person's life. So that your words and your deeds and even your mere presence will attract prosperity and abundance and all the good things. And those who follow that example of dharmic people, those who have this attunement, they will also be dharmic. Dharmic means, how do we do it? Only two things are really necessary, two categories of things you can say. Leading a noble life in every sense. And secondly, communing with the Supreme Being. This communion and communing with the Supreme Being will allow a flow, and it's more than just a hunch. It'll be a certain message that comes. There'll be a certainty to it. You can be a predictive person. You can declare. You see, if you're dedicated to speaking the truth, every word will come true. If supposing you say, oh, somebody will lose a position or something like that. And you say, no, they won't. They'll have abundance and prosperity. That will come to pass. It will be a way of contradicting all the negative things that you find, filling it instead with fullness and truth and beauty and goodness and love and harmony. You'll be a kind of marketplace or a kind of shop that dispenses all the best and noblest things in life. Not a second-hand shop that takes other people's dusty materials and resells it, giving you an extra problem. You know, some people buy a car and they say, oh, that's nice and cheap. And the salesperson says, you see, only one owner. They didn't mention that the owner was a complete lunatic driver who drove the thing into the ground. And somebody else's bad fortune you just purchased. Somebody who has this level of attunement will not give you those kinds of things, will only give you the good things, will only give you perfection and harmony. And with that goodwill, it'll have a transforming effect in another person's life. Whatever you say will come to pass, it'll be true. That's why in the ancient days, people are extremely careful not to get a curse from a sage. All the mythology tells it. There's always some sage who blurts out a curse. It has to come true. It cannot be otherwise. If the person is dedicated to truth, whatever they say will come true. That's the fact of it. So we have to be discerning in everything, see. Sometimes a hunch is a gamble. In Zimbabwe, there was one devotee who bred horses, race horses. He said to me, come along, come and see. So out of curiosity, I went. And he said, which horse do you think will win? I looked at a very nice horse. It looked so beautiful. And it was striding around. It looked confident. And I said, that's a beautiful horse. I think that's the horse I would choose. And the horse breeder laughed and said, that's a gelding. That's only a few years old. That horse has no chance of winning. We're just testing it out. We're giving him some practice. So we have to be careful. A lot of people put hunches on racehorses in terms of what a horse looks like or the name of the horse. I like the name. Well, that's just a guess. So maybe a hunch is just a guess. What do you think? Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.